This is Makkah, widely considered to be the holiest city in Islam. According to the Islamic tradition, it is the birthplace of Prophet Muhammad, as well as the birthplace of Islam. Prophet Muhammad used to live here, and it is the site for his earliest teachings. Makkah has been controlled by several empires over the course of history and visited by several historical figures. The Kaaba was the first construction in the city. Its construction is attributed to Prophet Abraham and his son Prophet Ishmael since the late antiquity. 2 billion Muslims around the world pray to God facing the Kaaba 5 times every day. It is also obligatory upon every Muslim to perform pilgrimage at this site at least once in their lifetime, if possible. However, as you would have already noticed, neither Makkah nor the Kaaba looks ancient. If built by Prophet Abraham, it should be more than 4,000 years old. The reason for its newer look is that this city has remained continuously settled by humans, and all the aging structures, including the Kaaba, have been repaired and rebuilt several times over the centuries. In this video, we will see the oldest paintings and engravings of Makkah as much as 700 years old, along with the first ever photograph and the oldest video footage of the holy city. One would clearly see how Makkah gradually evolved from an ancient city to a modern one. Despite the fact we start finding mentions to Makkah in writings as early as the 7th century, the first paintings depicting Makkah only started to appear around the start of the 14th century. That is more than 700 years ago. As we go through the pictures, you may pause the video at any time for closer observation. We shall start with the first miniature painting, the oldest one I am aware of. It was painted in 1307 CE, and hence, it is 714 years old as of 2021. From a Muslim origin, it depicts the scene of fixing of the black stone, Al-Hajj, Allah's word, into the Kaaba. The colors of the painting have faded, yet it is a great treasure for the Muslim world. Next, we have this miniature, depicting a scene from the Grand Mosque in Makkah. Look at the Kaaba and the worshippers around it. It was painted in 1442 CE. 3 years later, from 1445, comes this painting, also depicting the Great Mosque and the Kaaba. Notice the colorful patterns on the Kiswat al-Kaaba. That is the black cloth which covers the Kaaba. Also notice the simplicity of the mosque. The city walls are visible at the bottom. This one was painted in 1490, depicting a scene from the pre-Islamic times. Even though it is not very realistic, it is a good historical source. This miniature is much more realistic than the previous one. Not just the Kaaba, but also the Great Mosque, the city of Makkah, its walls and the mountains outside the city are visible in this miniature. It was painted in 1494. This one is from the 16th century. Notice the circular mathaf, that is the area of circumambulation or the tawaf, and its small size and simplicity. Also notice the minarets in the background. This miniature is from the same time. Notice the kiswa, the black stone and the old door of the Kaaba. This picture was painted in the first quarter of 16th century. Observe the colorful minarets, domes, and the interior of the mosque. Also notice the colorful patterns on the Kiswa, Kaaba. We can also see the stairs leading to the door of the Kaaba. This one was painted in 1567. We can feel what it would have been like to visit the site 500 years ago. All the paintings up until now were from a time period when the Mamluk Sultanate used to control the city. Now the Ottoman Empire took over Makkah. This one was painted around 1570 under the Ottoman Empire. Here we find a more familiar look of the Kiswa, Kaaba, with a gold belt going around it. The black stone has been encased into a silver casing. The Zamzam well is also visible. This miniature was created in 1595. The Kaaba has started to look more familiar. Notice the golden water spout at the top of the Kaaba. This is painted on the tile. Such works were created between 1640 and 1675. This is an early example of this tile work. The mimbar or the pulpit, the Bani Shaybar gate and other structures are visible here. This tile work is also from the same time. The whole mosque is represented in 2D form and different sites are labeled. This one as well, from the same period. Notice the details. This diagram is from the 18th century. This painting is also from the early 18th century. It is more realistic than the earlier paintings. You can clearly see the Kaaba and other structures around it, such as the mimbar, the Bani Shaybar gate and the building over the Zamzam well. The whole mosque is visible. It has bluish domes and rooftops. The entire city is depicted in detail. Here is the building that includes the Safa Hill and the pathway called Masar, which leads us to the Marwah Hill. This is the Marwah Hill. At the bottom right, the Jannat al-Mu'ala graveyard is visible and you can see the tombs of Prophet's relatives. The mountains around the city, including the Mount Arafat or Jabal Rahmat, is visible in the background. This is a detailed engraving from a non-Muslim origin. It was made in 1720. The mosque is shown in great detail and different objects are labeled. Notice the black stone, the Hatim, the circular Mathaf, the Maqam Ibrahim or the station of Abraham, the Bani Shaybar gate and the Mimbar. All are visible. To the left of the Bani Shaybar gate is the building of the Zamzam well. This was painted in 1738. Notice the same blue domes and rooftops. All the important places are labeled. Now we have this incredibly detailed engraving from 1788, depicting the landscape during the Hajj. The pilgrims are visible traveling in a long caravan, passing by the Mount Arafat, and eventually entering the city. You can see the Safa hill being climbed by the pilgrims for the ceremony known as Sa'i, in the footsteps of Hagar, the wife of Prophet Abraham. The pilgrims walk 7 times back and forth between the hills of Safa and Marwa on the Musar path. This slope is the Marwa hill, visible at the very edge of the picture. You can also see pilgrims enter the mosque through the Bab as-Salam and perform the arrival tawaf, walking around the Kaaba 7 times. In this picture, you can view the valley of Makkah and its mountains in a way that is no longer possible. This engraving inspired other paintings like this one. Notice the domes, which once used to be blue, but have lost their original color. However, the rooftops of the building within the mosque have retained the color. This was painted in the 19th century. We also have this coin, which was minted around 1845. It depicts the landscape of Makkah. The mosque and the Kaaba are visible. Mount Arafat is also visible in the background. From the year 1845, this painting shows the panoramic view of the city in great detail. The domes have turned completely white. There are a lot of buildings on the either side of the Mazar. The buildings over Safa and Marwa hills are visible. You can also see the city walls. And here is the famous Ajiyad fortress built by the Ottomans, where the Abraj al-Bayt clock tower currently stands. This was painted in 1846 in a guide for Hajj. This is from the second half of the 19th century. Observe the great detail. In front of the Kaaba, the Mimbar, Ibrahim, the Bani Shayba gate, and the building which included the Zamzam well are visible. Mountains are visible in the background. The domes have been painted completely white. The city walls are visible and buildings are decorated with colorful tile work. The Ajiyad fortress is also visible. Now you are about to see the oldest photograph of the Kaaba ever taken. This was photographed by Muhammad Sadiq Bey in 1861. Mount Kaikan is visible in the background. This painting is from 1880, painted in India. A Dutch scholar named Christiaan Snoek, a Honnier, photographed Makkah from 1885 to 1889. He is said to have converted to Islam and is also known by the name Sayyid Abdul Ghaffar. The Kaaba, the Mimbar, the Bani Shayba gate, Maqam Ibrahim and the building of the Zamzam well could be clearly seen. A Ajiyad fortress is also visible in the background. This picture was taken around 1910. This one as well from 1910, with a clearer view of Bani Shayba gate. The Bani Shayba gate was once the actual entrance into the mosque during the 7th century. Just by that, you can realize how small the mosque would have originally been. In June 1916, the Ottoman rule in Makkah ended and the city came under Hashemite rule. A few years later, in December 1925, Makkah was taken by the Saudis, and it remains under their rule up until today. In 1928, George Edward Albert Krugers made a documentary entitled Hidkult Mecca Feast, or The Great Mecca Feast. The actual film is longer than an hour, but I will only show a few relevant scenes. What you are about to see is not just the very first video recording of Mecca, but also the first video recording of Hajj. These buildings marked the border of the holy area, in which no unbeliever was allowed to enter. This footage was made somewhere close to Makkah. And finally, this is the oldest recorded video footage of Makkah itself. The mountains of Makkah Valley and the human settlements on them. Notice how different the place looked like less than a century ago. Here we see the everyday lives of the native people of Makkah. Remember the colorful tiles we saw in previous paintings? These are also visible here. Notice the old architecture. Here you can see the Grand Mosque. The gates of the mosque, and the Baba's Salam, and the first ever video recording of the Kaaba, the ceremony of Tawaf. The mosque is seen nearly empty just before the Hajj. You can see how it gets crowded as the Hajj rituals start. What you are looking at is the oldest video recording of prayers being offered at this mosque ever made. The prayer ends. This is the building of the Zamzam well. This is the Safa hill. Notice the arches of the building which were visible in many of the previous paintings. This is the ceremony of Sa'i on the Masar path, following the footsteps of Abraham's wife, Hagar. This footage is from 1938. King Abdulaziz Al Saud, the first king of Saudi Arabia, arrives along with his sons for Tawaf. He is seen kissing the black stone, a practice known as istilam. Here he enters the Kaaba, in order to cleanse the interior by washing it from the Zamzam water. Now, he leaves after the work is done. Next, we have this picture from 1954, showing the Mimbar which was depicted in several previous paintings. The Kaaba is also clearly visible. This footage is from 1954, Hajj. Pilgrims travel on foot and on camels, while others who can afford it ride to Makkah. These are the camps at Mina, and this is Mount Arafat. The Kaaba and the Grand Mosque during the Hajj. This is King Saud, second king of Saudi Arabia, seated on right with Sir Malik Ghulam Muhammad, the Governor General of Pakistan, on the left. he accompanies Begum, Aga Khan, who is seen performing Istilam on the black stone. This is Muhammad Ali Bogra, Prime Minister of Pakistan, performing Istilam. This corner of the Kaaba is called Rukn Yamani, or the Yemeni corner, where the Begum and the Governor General perform Istilam. This practice is known as Rami al-Jamarat, which is the symbolic stoning of the devil. This is the ceremony of Sa'i on the Mazar path. This is Hajj in 1960. The stoning of the devil, following the example of Prophet Abraham. Some people even throw shoes, showing how they condemn evil. The pillars fill up with pebbles. This is the valley of Makkah. And here is the Kaaba. This is the mimbar we have been seeing in previous paintings. This is the Bani Shaybar gate, the building that housed Maqam Ibrahim, the Black Stone, and the Rukn Yamani. It started to rain before the Asr prayer, which was followed by a bright sunshine. This is the view from the Jabal al-Noor. The minarets of the mosque are visible from here. And here is the famous cave of Hira, where according to the Islamic tradition, Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation from God while he was meditating. This aerial photograph shows the mosque during the first Saudi expansion. Notice the Mazar path has been added into the mosque. This is from Hajj in 1970. The city of Makkah. Notice the old architecture. One cannot view these mountains today due to the extensive constructions that have taken place. Kaaba would be open to the public. The kissing of the black stone. This is the Mazar path. Notice how different it looks as compared to the previous pictures and footages. The Zamzam well was constructed underground, as most of the buildings inside the mosque have been cleared away by this time, except for the Bani Shaybar gate and the Maqam Ibrahim building. This is Mount Arafat. And the stoning of the devil. From 1973, King Faisal performs Istilam. The ceremony of Sa'i. the Bani Shaybar Gate, the ceremony of Tawaf, this is from 1991. One must remember that the Kaaba is a very ancient building, which still remains under heavy use. You could see the stones in the Kaaba have started to weaken due to the aging. By 1996, the humidity, fungi and white ants had affected the Kaaba and cracks had appeared. It was decided that the Kaaba shall be repaired. A white wooden screen surrounding the Kaaba was erected. Then ceiling of the Kaaba was demolished, and the pillars supporting it were shifted to Al-Azhar Museum in Makkah, as these parts were subject to damage beyond repair due to woodworms, fungi and humidity. Then the plaster covering all the surfaces of the walls were removed, and it was found that the traditional mortar mixture had lost its cohesiveness. Therefore, all the stones were removed, cleansed, disinfected and refitted to their original positions, with mortar better suited to the purpose of the new style of construction. The foundation of the Kaaba was left untouched, as it has remained strong to this day, since the day Kaaba was built in antiquity. This is the newer look of the Kaaba after the historic repair. This is what its interior looks like after the repair. This is Hajj in 2002. This is what the mosque looked like after the second Saudi expansion. This is from 2015. During the Hajj, when the pilgrims are at Mount Arafat, the kiswa cover is changed. Abu Karib Assad was the Jewish king of Yemen, who is said to be the first person to cover the Kaaba with a cloth in the 5th century CE. As we have seen, several designs have been used for the kiswa. The modern one is made of 670 kilograms of silk. The embroidery contains 15 kilograms of gold threads. It consists of 47 pieces of cloth, and each piece is 14 meters long and 101 centimeters wide. Quranic verses are manually embroidered onto it. The kiswa is wrapped around the Kaaba and fixed to its base with copper rings. This is from 2018. The Safa Hill, as it looks like today. And the Masar, where the ceremony of Sa'i takes place. Remember how different this place looked like less than a century ago. In 2020, we got to see some very unique images from Makkah as the mosque was closed, and later when opened, the number of worshippers were restricted due to the pandemic. This is from 2021. These are the old arches we have been observing in pictures as early as the 16th century. While those are the new larger arches installed by the Saudi government during the third expansion by their government. The third Saudi expansion nears its end. The whole valley of Makkah has been converted into the largest mosque that ever existed. All the old structures have been replaced. If anything remains the same, it is the Kaaba, the very first construction in the valley of Makkah. Thanks for watching this short documentary film. Support the channel by subscribing and sharing the video where possible. See you next time.